Hey, welcome back to the stash. Daredevil. We all know him by now. He's the man without fear. For a couple of years in a row, he's also been the man without good comics. As much as it pains me to say, considering he's one of my favorite comic characters ever, poor Matt Murdock has been suffering as of late in his comic department. After what was considered an all-timer for modern comics with the Chip Zdarsky Daredevil run, Marvel decided the next best step for the character was to hire Saladin Ahmed to take the reins. A man who, depending on who you ask, isn't that very good. And surprise surprise, his Daredevil run was nothing short of a giant waste of time. Seriously, I don't say this often, but I hated it. It took him like almost a full 2-year time span to tell one single story. Do you know how jarring it was to see part 19 on the recap page? Anyway, after that volume finally came to an end, Marvel actually took their time with the relaunch before eventually revealing that Phillips was going to take over the series. Now, similarly to Saladin Ahmed, I was super unfamiliar with their previous works, and given the run that he left us with, I wasn't actually all that excited for this release. Listen, I love Daredevil. The character means so much to me. I've got hundreds and hundreds of comics of his. I've watched all the shows and movies, tracked down the Lost Game, dressed up as him for Comic-Con. My point is, I'm a huge fan of the character, but after the last volume, I felt pretty burnt from it, and I really wanted this comic to be something that helps relight that passion that's seemingly been dampened. And so I'm very happy to say that as of the day of recording this, I managed to go out and finally pick up my very own copy of Daredevil issue 1. And whether I think this is a good, great, average, or even bad comic aside, I'm just so excited to be talking about it. But hey, real quick, here at the stash, we're swinging for 26,000 subscribers. That's a tall order, I know, but with great power comes great responsibility. And all you gotta do is click subscribe. So if you're into Daredevil or just comic book deep dives, feel free to stick around. Also be sure to stay at the very end for another episode of Comics from the Stash. This time I'll be doing a cover reveal for my very own Daredevil issue 1 blind bag. But with that all said, this is Daredevil issue 1 by Phillips and Garbett. Jumping straight into Daredevil issue 1, the first thing that really stood out to me while reading this was something I honestly wasn't expecting to feel again so soon. And that's familiarity. Not in a way where it feels repetitive or like we're retreading old ground, but in a way where the first time in a while, Matt Murdock actually feels like Matt Murdock again. And that might sound like a small thing, but if you've been keeping up with Daredevil over the past couple of years or so, you know that it hasn't actually been guaranteed. Because for a while, there's just something that's just felt off, like something was severely disconnected. Almost like the writer just did some quick wiki searches on the characters instead of actually reading any of the comics. Because while the character was there visually, it never quite felt like Matt Murdock in terms of writing. So that's why coming to this issue, even before getting into the plot, the villain, or the direction, the most important question for me was simple. Does this feel like Daredevil? And I think for the most part, Phillips actually did a pretty decent job on writing his voice. From the way he carries himself, to the way he speaks, to the way he moves through the world, there's a sense of confidence here that feels familiar. Sometimes I will admit though that the dialogue can feel quite weird in the sense that you can occasionally tell the writer is trying super hard to get the voice right, the point where it doesn't feel natural, like you're reading something of fan fiction rather than an authentic product. But it's a minor thing. She does an all-round good job for the most part in my opinion. Daredevil in this finally feels grounded again. I think that's what I've appreciated most while reading this comic, because Daredevil has always been a character that lives in a balance, be it between control and chaos, faith and doubt, or even between a man trying to do the right thing and someone who keeps finding himself pulled deeper into the darkness of the city. And here, even in a brand new #1 relaunch that we all know Marvel just loves doing, you can already feel hints of that balance coming back into place. Matt just feels like he's been reset into a setting that makes sense. Even something as simple as his new role, working as a professor at ESU, helps a lot. It could have felt like one of those changes that exist just to say, look, things are different now. But honestly, I kinda like it, because it gives Matt a different kind of presence in the world. He's still a lawyer at heart, still a vigilante at night, but now there's this added layer. One where he's teaching, guiding, and interacting with people in a way that isn't just tied to crime or the courtroom. And that opens up a lot of potential. Granted, it's only the beginning, and what we've seen so far is nothing special in my opinion. It still doesn't take away from the potential this comic is showing. But then, of course, you have the moments where he's actually out there, back in the streets of Hell's Kitchen, wearing the uniform, doing what Daredevil does best. And I won't lie, seeing that again felt good. I mean, come on, There's something about Daredevil operating at street level, taking down thugs, moving through alleyways, dealing with the kind of crime that just feels real, that works. It always has. And after a run that, at least for me, felt like it took a long time to get anywhere, there's something refreshing about just seeing Matt being Daredevil again. And that simplicity might actually be one of the biggest strengths of this issue, because instead of trying to immediately prove something, instead of trying to shock you or reinvent the character right out of the gate, this first issue feels more focused on re-establishing. It reminds you of who this character is supposed to be, and it's a trope that even I myself love to use whenever I write my own Spidey stories. It feels like such an easy yet perfect way to just immediately ground the character, and in that sense, it works. But at the same time, I do admit that its simplicity also comes with a bit of a downside, because while everything here feels solid, while everything feels like it's in the right place, there isn't really anything in this issue that stands out as special. At least not yet. I think that comes down to largely the main threat being introduced here. Because as of this first issue, Omen feels pretty generic. I'm sure he'd be a far more interesting antagonist as opposed to whatever the hell Saladin Ahmed was doing, but nothing immediately grabbed me. And that's not necessarily a deal breaker. A lot of great Daredevil runs didn't start with their strongest villains, and I do acknowledge that not all new villains for Hornhead will have as strong as a start as someone like Muse did for his first appearance, but when you're launching a brand new #1, you kind of want something that immediately grabs you, something that shows you why all of this matters. So while this does get a lot right in most aspects, the villain side of things is so far kinda lacking. The setup is there, the potential is definitely still there, but the presence isn't fully there yet. And that's where I think this issue ends up sitting overall, because on one hand, it does a really good job at fixing something that needed to be fixed. Matt feels like Matt again. The world feels grounded again, and the tone is more in line with what you'd expect from Daredevil. Plus, the artwork is a huge step up in my opinion. Personally for me, I just could never get into Aaron Kuder's artwork for Daredevil, so visually, I'm just happy that this book just looks better. The way the action is framed, the way the characters move, plus the overall atmosphere, it all comes together in a way that makes the comic feel more alive than the previous volume ever could. That for me matters a lot for a character like Daredevil, where so much of the storytelling relies on the mood, shadows, and how the city feels around him. So when you combine all of that, you end up with an issue that is good, like genuinely good, but also all around pretty safe. And don't get me wrong, I don't mean that as a negative, at least not completely, because after the last run, maybe safe is exactly what this character needed. Maybe the goal here wasn't to immediately create something unforgettable, but to rebuild a foundation that actually works. And if that's the case, then this issue is a solid first step. I just don't know yet if it's going to be anything more than that. However, I do feel some sense of hope with the new team in charge of the comic. Overall, I think that's really where I land on Daredevil issue 1. Because after everything that came before this, after a run that, for me, felt like it dragged on without ever really justifying the time it took to tell its story, this issue feels like a very important reset, and sometimes that's enough. Sometimes the most important thing a character needs is to just feel like themselves again. Lord knows Spider-Man needs that, and for the first time in a while, Matt Murdock actually does. He feels grounded, present, and like a man who understands the weight of what he's doing, even if he doesn't have all the answers yet. And that alone goes a long way, because Daredevil, in my opinion, works best when everything feels close and personal and messy, especially when the fights aren't just physical but also internal, and this issue, at the very least, feels like it's moving back in that direction. But at the same time, I just don't think I can sit here and say this is something incredible like other people are. It's great others are enjoying it way more than me, don't get me wrong, but I just find it to be good, like a solid start to a comic that hopefully only gets better and better from here. I do know and understand, of course, that not every great run starts with a bang, and that some of them naturally need to build and grow into a story that's iconic, and maybe, hopefully, that's what is going on here. I will say that there is still a part of me that's just a little bit cautious, because I've seen Daredevil start off fine before, only to lose its way, and with a villain that, at least right now, feels pretty generic, there's always that risk that things just settle into being average. And that's the last thing I want for this character, because Daredevil shouldn't be average. He's one of the most consistently great characters Marvel has ever had. From Miller to Nascenti to Bendis to even Zdarsky, there's a legacy here, a gold standard, and this issue, while it doesn't reach that level, at least feels like it understands it. And that gives me some hope, because if this team can take what works here and genuinely build on it, then maybe this can turn into something more. Maybe this can grow into a run that actually matters, but for now, this is just a beginning, a solid and needed one. And with Daredevil, that's always the most important part. Because every time Matt Murdock puts that suit back on, it's not about whether he's going to fall, but rather about whether he's going to get back up. And right now, for the first time in a very long time, it finally feels like he has. Hello and welcome to another episode of Comics from the Stash. As you can see, we've got the Daredevil blind bag already open with the cool comic variant cover ready to show. But first, I want to take a second to appreciate how cool this all is. I'm a sucker for these kind of things, so I was super happy when I saw that my local comic store was getting these shipments in. But anyway, without wasting any more time, the cover I ended up getting was actually a really cool one. I got the foil variant cover by Ryan Stegman, and man does this one pop. I'm honestly super happy with it, and out of the list of covers, it's definitely one I wanted most. One I'd maybe want more would be one of the Alex Maleev covers, as he's one of my personal favorite Daredevil artists of all time. But nonetheless, I'm still really happy with what I got. Anyway though, that is it for today. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you have enjoyed, please like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already, because here, any support means so much. And yeah, thank you guys again for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.